knew it was coming. Well, good evening, everybody. Sorry about that. A little bit of a technical difficulty. Can you all hear us in the commission chamber? How about Chelsea or Tracy? Can you hear us?
Yeah. So we can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
We can hear you, Pete. Can you hear us?
Yep, we got you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks. Well, welcome to the County Commissioners regular meeting for October 18th of 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Commissioner Ibarra.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Gosar here. If you join in and stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3, public hearing. We do not have a public hearing. Item 4, comments from the public. We'll start with public comments in the room, in the physical room. Does anybody have a public comment here in the physical room? How about online? Would anybody like to make a public comment online?
I just have one.
Sure.
I apologize. I wasn't able to attend the special meeting last week. I figured you guys could have a one-item contract cancellation without me. I was pumping sewage out of the basement. I couldn't really get out of it. It was an emergency.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
And then just a clarification on the voter's guide. I think they had the county commission making 92.5 each. Just want to let everybody know that all 3 of us don't make 92.5. Our salaries are 30,000 apiece. And that was just kind of a misprint. So just want to make sure that everybody's dealing with the same bit of information.
We don't even make 92.5 combined.
You're right. Yep. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, commissioners, I'd entertain a motion to close the public comment, please.
I move that we close the public comment period.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 5, disclosures. Commissioner Ibarra.
I have none.
Commissioner Richardson.
I have
And none for me also. So item 6, considerations of changes on the agenda. Would there be any changes to the agenda tonight? Jackie, thank you. Please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I respectfully request that you remove item number 16, my request for ARPA funding. At this time, I do not have sound figures to provide to you, and I want to have that information available with a breakdown of my request. And so I will move it at a future meeting.
Thank you, Jackie. Item 16 is off. Anybody else? All right. Commissioners, I'd entertain a motion to accept the changes to the agenda.
I move that we accept the changes to the agenda as presented.
second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 7, approval of the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda, or I'd entertain a motion if you're not? You're ready to move it.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 8 of the regular agenda, page 2, proclaim October 2022 through November 17th, 2022 as the Operation Green Light for Veterans. And could somebody help me out with that one other than,
Read it.
yeah, or is there anything other?
There is a resolution.
I'll
Okay,
read it or I'll read it.
I'll read it.
okay, I got it, thank you. So the resolution is supporting Operation Green Light for Veterans. Whereas the residents of Albany County have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for all of the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas Albany County seeks to honor these individuals who have paid the high price for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, religious groups, civil service, and by functioning as county veterans service officers in 29 states to help fellow former service members access more than $52 billion in federal health, disability, and compensation benefits each year. And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and whereas an estimated 20% of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future, and whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, and whereas active military service members transitioning from military service are at a high risk for suicide during their first year after military service, and whereas the National Association of Counties encourage all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize Operation Greenlight for veterans, and whereas the Albany County appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted, therefore be it resolved with the designation as a green light for Veterans County, Albany County hereby declares from October through Veterans Day, November 11th, 2022, a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform transitioning from active service. Therefore be it further resolved that in observance of Operation Greenlight, Albany County encourages its citizens, a patriotic tradition, to recognize the importance of honoring all those who made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom by displaying a green light in the window of their place of business or residence. If there's any comments? Motions. I entertain a motion for item 8.
I move that we proclaim October 22nd to November 17th, 2022 as Operation Greenlight for veterans.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. I'd like to thank all our veterans and all those who gave the full measure. Really think here this time of the year, it means so much, especially on November 11th. So if we can get the green lights in your place of business or your place of home, your home, that would be a wonderful way to recognize that the impact those people have done for us. Number 9, present for discussion and approval, a commercial lease agreement between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming and Western Water Consultants, Inc. for the lease of the second floor of 3821 Beach Street. Josh and Jennifer.
So I will start. Josh, on behalf of the Laramie Development Corporation, is that what it's called now? Anyway, Laramie Economic Development. They are our leasing agent for Beach Street. They have been working with WWC, or they brought WWC in as a potential tenant for the upstairs of Beach Street where Medicico Technologies moved out of. So the lease that you have in front of you is a 10-year lease. And with the term, and it's 10 years for several reasons. The first is WWC intends to do some substantial renovations to that second floor to add more dedicated office space rather than the mix of office and open space that it has now. And they would like to, in acknowledgement of that commitment to that space, have a longer term lease. So there is that 10-year schedule. With the rent schedule, it's currently written so that the rent itself starts January. The lease starts effective tonight, I think is the date we have in there currently. They would start paying rent January 1st. That gives them a couple months to start on their renovations. So then they could have them at least in progress before they start paying rent. The rent schedule itself for the 10-year period is attached to that lease as Exhibit 1. If you have questions about that rent schedule, Josh Boudreau put that together and he can talk about where he got the metrics and all of that for that. The question that is for your discussion and consideration additionally tonight is within section 19 of the lease, which is the termination language of that lease. There are a couple proposed options that WWC would like to see in there because this is such a long-term lease and such outside of what we usually do. My suggestion was that we bring their suggestions to you as a board. WWC representatives are here this evening, so they can talk to you about what it is they would like to do, why they're requesting those termination provisions. And along with that, in Exhibit 2 is WWC's proposed renovations. There's 3 pages that were attached as Exhibit 2. The first page is the floor plan as it exists now. The second page is a demolition schedule, I believe, that shows the walls that would be removed now. And the third page is what it would look like after their renovations are complete. So to start, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, Jennifer, on that section 19, the highlighted bullet points there, is it one of those that we're deciding on?
So-
Or is it a,
Excuse me, I have to pull it. I have it pulled up here. Let me scroll up so that I don't tell you the wrong thing. If you're looking at, so it would be either subpart I or subpart double I. So, and subpart double I has the subsection A underneath it. Or the third option would be other terms as negotiated. So the first small 1 and small 2 are example language that WWC suggested. Or if there are additional terms or changed terms. That's why the representatives from WWC are here in case you want to have that discussion with them. Are there any other questions that you need from me?
You don't happen to have the average rent paid per square foot off the top of your head, or is that Josh, somebody you might know?
Josh has the rent schedule. I can, and I think it's on Exhibit 2, Exhibit 1. If you,
I have the rent schedule as proposed, but what would that be? What is a going rate for rent? Per
that
square foot?
question Josh can answer for you, I believe.
Okay, we'll wait till Josh joins us.
Okay,
Commissioners, any questions for Jennifer?
that's all I have at this point.
okay.
Okay,
Do you want to talk to Josh about rent or would you like to talk to WWC?
is he on? I don't see him.
He is on.
Oh, there he is.
He
Hi,
has a
Josh.
little A.
Good evening. How are you?
Honorable Chair, Commissioners, this is Josh Boudreau. Yes, I am here.
Awesome. I don't know if you heard that. I had a question with regard to going lease rate for a like property on square footage. Do you have that number in your head, Josh, or somewhere I could see that?
I do, and Honorable Chair and Commissioners, that average lease rate would be in the vicinity of $11 to $14 per square foot for this style of office.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or thoughts for Josh?
Would you like to talk to WWC? Do you have a question for
please.
that?
You bet.
So I will introduce, this is Murray Schroeder and Justin
Sure, fair.
Terfair. I can see it in my head. Come on up.
All right, yeah. Mary Justin, good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, Chairman Gosar and Commissioners, thank you for having us. I think we're here to, answer questions if you have any, we can answer, and then maybe put in a pitch for the termination agreement language that we've offered. Primarily, I think the second one might be most confusing. The first one's about time and how much time we would ask for notice, and then how much time we'd ask for to vacate, and that's, as it reads now, it's 1 year and 1 year. And we're seeing a pretty significant investment of $350,000 to $500,000 in renovating the space. And so we're trying to, get a few years out of the deal at a minimum. And that's what motivates that year and a year. And we honestly, we'd like 10, but if we could have it, we'd take it.
And Murray, remind me, why is it that you're moving from a building that you own to renting this? Were you downsizing? or-
Well, no, we're actually growing, and we've been in the space at Skyline for 30 years. I've been there the whole time.
Right.
It's outlived our concept of what's a healthy space for people that are in our industry and our clients. It's just a little dated. And what we did is we looked at actually renovating it completely. And it became pretty clear, you know, after going through the math, that it'd be far smarter from a business perspective to lease something as opposed to invest in something that's in the state it's in. It's not that it's not serviceable, it's just doesn't excite us anymore. So, yeah, time for change.
You have to decide if you're gonna be in the real estate business or the engineering business.
Right.
You have any questions?
No, I'm okay with, I'm ready to move forward. So we have the Chamber Business Alliance doing this work for us, and I think they do a good job. And we know that WWC will be around for a long time. So, you know, it's interesting that that's a SLIB funded kind of like economic development space. And lots of times the companies that just sort of partner up with the state and the county to do that can struggle, you know, and all across the state and all the communities. So for me, I like having somebody in there that we don't have to worry about or babysit, or, you know, I don't know if we should even be in the real estate business anyway, but we are, because that's how SLIB is. So, but it would be nice to not have, for us as commissioners, to not have to go back to that like we have in the past. So that's my approach to the subject anyway.
Yeah. Well, I went to the building on Friday, I think it was, and took a look at it. And it's a nice building, you know, it's fantastic. It is a little bit weird designed. Obviously, you guys know more about it than I do. The break room's a little bit interesting. But could you just kind of walk me through what will all of your renovations be permanent to the space? Because I guess we have to think about if 10 years from now, you guys no longer want to be in the renovations, will there just be walls there that are permanent?
Yeah, I'll let Justin address those details.
Okay.
He's been running with that since day one. He's really good at that. So.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. So all of the improvements we'll be making, I'd say, are fairly permanent. They're new drywall walls that'll run all the way up to the ceiling. We'll be replacing the drop ceiling that's in there now. A lot of the tiles have water damage. So our intention is to make it fairly permanent with new walls, but move to more from an open concept, which is what it is now, to individual offices. We find our staff really appreciate having their own space. You know, with COVID and kind of safety concerns, as a business, we want to keep everybody in their own space. So moving forward for us, it really needs to be more permanent offices opposed to that open concept that it is now. So our intention is everything we're putting in there will be fairly permanent. Nothing structural. So somebody could come in and wipe it again and go back to an open space or different configuration. So the changes aren't structural, they're mostly semi-permanent.
Okay.
And the break room that you might be referring to, was it the one downstairs?
No, the weird
upstairs.
one upstairs
Oh,
with the
no,
long
without-
counter and all the
yeah.
cabinets and things.
And the really tiny sink.
The really tiny,
Yeah,
and no fridge.
Our intention is to convert that space and do just a small break room with a fridge and a sink and keep it kind of isolated, opposed to right now it's open to the whole open space. So keep people's lunch smells in that room.
I think ultimately it'll probably, you know, at some point when, I mean, maybe WWC will want to be there 20 years, I don't know, but I think it'll add value to the building. Like, you know, there's a certain point in time when the improvements get dated enough or worn enough that it's time for, you know, it's like space in a shopping mall. But whoever goes in there is gonna, so I don't have any. As a matter of fact, I think that it's too open. Like there's a lot of square footage to heat and cool, mess around in, and it's not that. mean, I guess, I don't know, it's like a lab or something. It's interesting, but maybe that was all the rage in 2006 or whenever it was. I don't know.
Cubicles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was designed for cubicle. We have the original layouts and it was kind of designed for cube type layout in the open space and then a few select offices. And
Mhm.
so our intention is to convert it to offices.
Like, I think it'll be, you know, if or when WWC leaves that building, I think it'll be more palatable and more appreciated by other potential tenants than the way it is now.
And then I just, those interior walls that are no longer, that aren't there now, but will be there, will those have, you know, Cat6 cables and electricity and to them? Because I was drooling about all the electric on the outside because I work in a building that doesn't have any. But there's nothing in the middle there, so I'm guessing you guys will bring that from the ceiling.
Yeah, we worked with an interior designer to help lay out the office spaces and kind of think through some of those IT and electrical needs to make sure you can configure the offices differently. And so all the new walls will have a setup where you can kind of orientate the office however needed for the person in there.
They're not stuck with one desk position.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
And then my final, I did not see like a breakdown of the renovations and what that would cost, like, you know, electric was this or walls was this. Do you have that available
We
to us?
can sure provide that. We're working with Archon, a local contractor to complete the renovations. They provided a budget of $350,000 plus a 15% contingency. They have items broken out by drywall, electrical, minor plumbing right around that break room space, like new window treatments and stuff like that.
Okay. And then the parking, was that gonna be sufficient for you guys? And
We believe so, yeah. The parking around the building now would house we have 5 work trucks currently and a couple trailers. And it would fit in the back of the building. And we worked through that with Josh. We think there's enough parking there.
And then I think Jennifer and Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, that building kind of made that if we needed to put another wing on it, that it would be able to be built. Is that something, if that was in the next 10 years, is that anticipated in the contract? Is there anything, Jennifer, that would prohibit us from doing that if that was something that needed? And then I guess with you guys.
So our renovations are strictly the half of the building that we occupy. And then there's the common space in the middle with the elevators and restrooms and an IT space. And those would be serviceable to another half if those, at least from my interpretation.
There's nothing in the contract with either this lease with WWC or the lease for the downstairs tenant that would ever prohibit us from doing something like that in the future.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that might be something we might think about, and I wanted to talk with you guys and say, if this were to happen, what would we need to do to be good neighbors with you? Because nobody really wants jackhammers going right at 11:30 in the morning, right through the rest of the day. Commissioners, any other?
One last question.
Sure.
If the county should decide to terminate the lease agreement prior to what was before, you stated some reimbursement payments here. Are these solid? There wouldn't be any more as far as the repayment on this schedule you have here for $400,000 in 2024 and decreasing with every year that you're there longer. Are those solid, Jennifer, in the contract as I'm looking at right now?
So we put them in there as solid in this. We could change it so that it was, 4/5 of the cost and then 3/5 and 2/5 and 1/5 down if you want to do that, so that given that they don't, with their budget of 350 plus the contingency, it's hard to say whether you use all that contingency or well, you always use some of it, but if you use all of it or go even above it, that they end up having to do more if something happens. We could split it into like a fractional repayment per line item if that would be better.
Jennifer, as the attorney for us, there is a couple of termination thoughts here.
Uh-huh.
Does anyone of those make it easier on the county and your office, and make it cleaner, or which of those is preferred by the?
From our perspective, it doesn't, there's trade-offs to both. The first one essentially requires, like, if the county were to vacate or to terminate the lease in that first 5 years, we would essentially give WWC would have 2 years before they were required to be out. The 12-month notice and then a 12-month move-out period. That means, though, that the county doesn't have to come up with any money out of pocket, whereas that second option requires out-of-pocket money. And those are in there not because we think that there's going to be an issue or any of those things, but we always have to have that termination language in there. So we just wanted to give you guys at least a couple samples to consider, and then if you had other thoughts, we can discuss those, but it's really a decision that's up to whether the commission wants to budget for a couple of years if something were to happen in that first 5 years, or if you'd rather budget for repayment of costs in the first 5 years rather than time.
I don't have a preference. It's fair for the county to have some skin in the game, because you can't kick somebody out of their own renovations. I mean, I'm gonna guess that it's a tax reason. You could depreciate over some amount of time the renovations, and if they don't get the use of the building for as they depreciate that out over time, they need to recapture that in the form of cash, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they do the numbers. It's a business decision that they're ready to make.
Right.
But if on both sides of the deal, if you're if you're them, they need to know that we won't get all up in something and mess up their business model. So, so it means that, I mean, all contracts are like that. It means they're serious. It's way better than the ones where, you have some beggar business in there that the business council's trying to make go, because they don't have any of that stuff.
So it's really just a question of where this commission's comfort level lies.
Yeah. And Murray and Justin, do you have a preference for either of those terminations with either the 1 year notice and then 1 year to move out, or then the payback schedule, which was one of those your idea and not the other, or it makes them never mind? I'm just interested in your perspective.
I'll defer to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I think, I think our preference is to stay there as long as possible, and not have to worry about the termination. But if it came to that, probably the repayment would make more sense for our business. It's a little less risky. We can regain our capital if we get terminated the first year, let's say.
If you guys are making meth in there or something, we can kick you out.
If that's the case, we're gonna fight about all those provisions, just so we're clear. Don't start a meth business on this.
So then you would say that double I with the repayment schedule would be your preferred?
Probably.
Yeah, and then that is a discussion with Commissioner.
If we
Rivera,
change the repayment from being a dollar amount to being like 4/5 of the cost, not to exceed,
I think that
like a 500,000 total cost or whatever, 15% added on to 350,000 is not up. So, but a not to exceed amount. Does that work for you guys?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question would be though, if we have a repayment schedule, would we still have some sort of notice and period to vacate?
Yeah, I don't see those two
It's-
things as mutually exclusive.
I don't
It's
either.
the 90 days. So it changes it to the 90 days and 90 days. So it'd give you 6 months with the repayment in addition.
No, you want the year and the year. You want,
Well, for full disclosure, I mean, I'm an owner, Justin's an owner, there's 16 of us, and it's a 100-person business. But I'm
Right.
on the way out. So it's gonna be his problem to be able to find a new space.
Right.
Right.
And I'll make it through 6 months, no problem.
Justin, it's all you after that.
It's Junior here that's gonna inherit the problems.
I can't imagine, I mean, here we are talking about this, but WWC is a stable company, and unless we have massive changes in the economy or the industry, you guys will still be here doing what we're doing. So we're sort of beating the dead horse. I think you guys, from my perspective, I think you guys just decide how you want it. And, but to me, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think it could be both.
So instead of
Money and
read
time.
and. So say or right now.
Says all.
Well, so the second option, I'll just read it here.
Yeah.
Subject to the following remodel investment repayment schedule, either party shall have the right to terminate the lease by giving at least 90 days prior written notice to the other party and an additional 90 days to vacate the premises, which can be reduced by mutual agreement of the parties. And then the repayment provision is if the county provides WWC notice of termination during the specified time periods, the following remodel investment repayment schedule shall apply. In 2023, the county shall reimburse WWC. Right now it reads $400,000. In 2024, the county shall reimburse WWC $300,000. In 2025, the county shall reimburse WWC $200,000. In 2026, the county shall reimburse WWC $100,000. And if the notice of termination is provided after December 31st, 2026, there is no remodel investment to be repaid.
well, and that's if we provide the notice.
Correct.
So if they provide the notice on their side, then they forfeit the,
Yeah.
okay, so
And
they would forfeit.
I wrote it that way to give them protection if they wanted to stay. I mean, I'm assuming they want to stay for that long, or they
Right.
wouldn't be putting the money in. So really, that repayment would only be if the county were to terminate the lease.
Right.
Then we would have to compensate them some portion of the investment they've made in that
Commissioners,
first 5 years.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Go
I'll
ahead,
I'll just share, we've been looking for a lease space for 5 years, 4 years. This is the first space that's popped up, working with Josh and the Business Alliance. It seems like even 6 months would be difficult for us to find a new space and transport 18 to 20 people, all our stuff. I think 12 months and 12 months would be preferred, but we don't want to twist your arms too bad either.
Well, what if we do 12 months and 12 months and the repayment schedule if the county, wants out of the lease? And if WWC wants out of the lease, it's 90 and 90. Because nobody, if you decide you want out of the lease, you don't want to be on the hook for 2 years. You know what I'm saying? And then the cost to you would be the forfeiture of the, sort of the reclaiming the value of the investment, right? So, because to me, we would turn around and lease that building out. It doesn't have to sit there for 2 years because of something, you know what I'm saying? So to me, I think that the longer time frame and the money could apply to the commission if we want out of the lease. And the shorter time and no money would apply to you guys if you want out of the lease. And we could make those changes and bring them to the next meeting, or so that it's not like, so that it's in written language. I don't know that it makes it. When do you guys want to start tearing into that building?
Yesterday.
We're ready.
So.
If you would like to provide some direction and then table a final decision until towards if everybody is agreed on terms, I can have changed language to incorporate whatever terms everybody's gonna agree on before the end of
I
this
don't know what
meeting.
the other commissioners think of my thoughts, and I don't know what these guys think. I just threw something
Regardless
out.
of, I know, that applies to any changes you'd like to make. If if you guys are gonna agree on them and you guys are gonna agree on them, I could make changes, print the copies, let them review them, and then bring them back at the end of the meeting. If we are at that point or get to that point.
At the end of today's meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to postpone these guys being able to move
Right.
forward.
Right.
I don't either, but I think that that is difficult to justify, right? Where this is in front of the public, this
Right.
piece, and then to change it and then vote on something that's not in front of the public causes me a little heartburn. I do also want to see the schedule from Archon. Not that I don't believe you. Contracts aren't for things that when they go well, it's when things go poorly. And then we need to think about the repayment schedule. So if it's a year and a year, that would be 2 years from January 1st, we said, get out, right?
Right.
Then it'd be December 31st of 2024 before that would be in force.
Mhm.
And so do we really want to do 400,000 at the end of 2 years? We may or may not, right? Even, and so I think hammering out those things for me, without having you to try to fast finger it.
Sure.
And then maybe there's something we can say to them, hey, go ahead, while we're doing this, move forward with what, for the next 2 weeks, what would you guys plan on doing? I mean, like, if we said to go forward today, what in the next 2 weeks would look like? Would Archon actually get in there, or?
I'm not sure. Right now, our tentative to Archon is November 1st, if all went according to plan. But the first actions would be demolition and would leave the space probably unrentable, you know. Yeah.
November 1st is
See,
the next meeting.
I don't have a problem with it,
That's
and
what
the reason I said it is because the working parts of the contract is the price per square footage, it's the lease, right? I mean, we're basically discussing what the termination language looks like, which isn't very likely to happen. And I actually think that the county needs an incentive to not terminate the lease. You know, if I was on that side, I would want time and the possibility of money so that commissioners don't willy-nilly push me out of my $400,000, you know, investment, right? So, so I don't have a problem with it. I mean, if we were talking about the substance of the lease itself rather than the escape hatch, maybe I'd want to wait, but I don't have any trouble, you know, with, I think that that's like cut, paste, delete 3 words, you know, like for Jennifer, that's a short project, and not very complicated.
Well, Heber, I don't know if you heard Justin say that he doesn't anticipate any demolition until before November 1st. Our meeting is November 1st. So I think, you know, we have time to let Jennifer actually do a decent job and have the public feel like it's been transparent, you know, and go ahead and approve this reimbursement. But we're not holding up the process. If, in fact, Archon is not planning to do anything prior to the first day. Correct, Justin? That's what you more or less gave us
Yeah.
that date.
It's not easy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Those turkeys.
I-
Go to work season.
I would ask just some direction from the board as to what you'd like to see as the termination language, so I can get it drafted. We can get it, make sure it's good with WWC so that when we bring it to you next time, it says what you'd like it to say, to our understanding, and WWC's already agreed to it.
I don't have a problem with a year and a year. I totally understand that. I think that's a reasonable thing. I think after 2 years, I don't feel like 400,000 is, we should be on the hook for. I don't think that's a reasonable expectation from the county's perspective. And maybe these guys would have an idea of what would be reasonable after 2 years. And then work from there. Because I'm not sure. I don't think it's gonna go sideways.
No.
I hope it doesn't go sideways at all. I mean, it's really good to have a long-term lease with a stable company, right? That everybody loves it. And so, and whatever you're gonna do to the space, I'm sure it's warranted. I went in there and I was like, you know,
Right.
so I don't want to cast any aspersions on whatever you guys do. You guys are professionals to do that. I just want to have the language fairly straightforward so that when you guys come or when we sign off on it, that well, there's no ores in there. There's no, So I guess if you can do that today, that's great. If not, we can send it to you and say, hey, if we went with the 1 year notification and the 1 year to move out, what would that look like in December 31st, 2024? What do you think would be a fair remuneration for those things that you did a year later, and then figure out what that looked like?
We can do that if we're gonna do that, if we bring it back at the next meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So you can run it through everybody on your end and make sure that it's good.
Yeah. Hey, commissioners, does that sound reasonable to you guys?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's some time there where if you guys decide to leave and renovations haven't been completed, that we're not left with this building that's half constructed, half not. And you vacate in 6 months. So I want to make sure there's assurance for us as well.
Commissioner Richardson, anything? Okay. Does that seem reasonable to you guys?
Yeah, sounds good.
Good. Well, thank you. I'll be interested to see what it looks like. I would love to sign the lease and be done and get you guys in there for it. Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah,
I'll
thank
be
you.
change language according to this.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Probably tomorrow. Okay, thanks, Justin.
Okay. Jackie, do we need to table that officially or?
Yes, please.
I entertain a motion to table item number 9, if that's your wish, Commissioner.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, guys, and we'll have it, if we can have that put on the November 1st agenda, make sure that shows up. Thank you. Item 10, present for approval, construction contract between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming, and Shepherd Construction Inc. for the Board of County Commissioners meeting room remodel. Jake, good evening.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you. This is for the contract for remodeling this room for our two Shepherd Construction. We solicited for RFP. They were the only respondent. Arret Design is their architect who did the preliminary studies on this. I am proposing in the contract that we award them a contract for $170,000, which includes architectural engineering and I use engineering loosely. There's no structural engineering expected, and construction of the room, and that's kind of what is showing.
Commissioners, any questions for Jake? Will this ceiling be similar, since I know over here it's not, for the windows?
The guys from Shepherd Construction were here Monday when it was a holiday, and we walked through briefly, and I don't have an answer for you exactly. That'll be something that as we go through the design, they will put forward some options, some alternatives to be able to get what you guys ultimately want to have.
It would be super cool to get this ceiling higher.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what the implications of being able to move that up is, but it'll definitely be part of the discussion, and we'll have several meetings with all the stakeholders to discuss all of that and get a project that hopefully everybody's happy.
And then Jake, does that include the AV equipment, or is that a separate from this contract?
It is separate. Adam says he has most of that stuff. What the contractors are going to do is facilitate that stuff to be installed. Like they'll run the plugs and the wires, and the cables, and any like infrastructure to them. Okay. But the actual, like the microphones, the keys, the whatever else that Adam wants in here will be supplied by Adam, not by this contract.
Because we kind of have it
I think
already.
we just.
Yeah.
And then the safe stand, I'm guessing. What's that, Rascal?
That's to be determined. But that room will go away, and we'll fix the doors so they really lock.
Okay.
Just have to pull them over.
Right, awesome. Any other questions? Commissioners, I'd entertain a motion for item number 10 then, please.
I move that we approve item 10 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I actually have one
Sure.
more question. Is this like are we hiring him as a construction manager or is this design bid build?
Design build.
Gotcha.
So
Oh, it's design build,
It's
because,
design.
right.
So they will probably sub out some elements of the construction, but
Sure.
they are the general contractor. They're not, it's not like we're hiring a CMAR to do the construction management of the
Right.
project. They are the lead.
So the 170,000, is that like a GMP or,
Yeah, that's their maximum for all-in budget.
okay,
That's the architectural, the engineering, the construction, the subs, the materials. That's.
so can it come in below that if,
Yeah, it could.
the question is who's taking the risk is the question.
The way that I phrased it to them was that we have $170,000 budget. We want a project for this. So if they come in on their first pass and their estimated cost is 250,000, they have to rework it to get to 107. There is no incentive in it for them to do a project for 150,000.
Right.
So
they'll spend all the money. The question is, how hard are they willing to work to get us all the things that we want and need? Like how hard,
I guess
how hard are they gonna push the pencil?
right, and I suppose that isn't exactly identified in the contract. It's up to me to put it, I guess,
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah, that's
And we don't
that's
sign,
the question I'm asking.
and we have the design, and they can't proceed to construction until they meet a design that meets our budget and our intent. So we have that sort of stepping stone
Mhm.
to put the brakes on and say, this isn't what we want. We don't want you to build something we don't want. So we do have that sort of progression of work where when they're done with the design aspect of it, we can say yay or nay.
Okay, cool.
And then I guess, Jake, is there a schedule of the funding? So, let's say they come up with a design that we want built, we're not gonna give them 170,000 right then and say, go get her done.
And then we will give them monthly draws, like on any other contract. Okay. Based on work performed, we will kind of pay that. We're not gonna just cut them a check for 170 tomorrow and say, have fun.
Right.
It'll be, the architect will put together plans, and then they'll do a draw on the architect, and then they'll probably order materials and put a draw on for that, and then start working and put draws.
Okay.
That's kind of the progression.
Are they gonna give us a schedule, like, hey, it should be done by March
I gave-
31st of 2023, and if it's not done, then these things happen? Because I have to tell you, I got tired.
I have,
On the phone.
and Jennifer, maybe you can support me, or you can give me clarification, but we have the schedule, the end of the contract, the completion in February 23rd. It's February of 2023. I don't know the specific date. And then after that, it's a $500 liquidated damages per day, per calendar.
Ouch.
Wow.
Where will we have our meetings? We haven't really discussed that, but if we're gonna buzz out of here.
Yeah.
We do.
Either maybe the city would allow us the morning meeting with their chambers, and then the night meeting, maybe we could go to the courtrooms, one of the courtrooms upstairs. Your thoughts on that?
The city has court on Tuesday mornings in council chambers.
Chambers. Okay.
We could use the library.
Right.
We could use the library meeting space potentially.
We'd probably have to, or the fairgrounds, but we'd have to schedule it because they schedule it.
Right.
We'd have to get on the dock.
Jackie, do you have any?
I just wonder, when is it gonna start? You can see that I've started cleaning the shelves over there, and everything is almost out of that room over there, and so Jake
They're
has them on a
chomping-
tight time
They're
schedule.
chomping at the bit to start, because I got them, February 21st is their expected completion date. And if they and I have it in the back of my mind that if there's material issues, that they can't get material that's beyond their control, I'll propose to give them a little bit of a time extension. But if they're just not here because they want to work somewhere else, that probably won't rise to the occasion of wanting to give them a time extension.
Yeah. And when would they start? Could they start tomorrow, for instance, if we approve this tonight?
The architects will start tomorrow, yes.
Okay. So we
Probably,
probably could
maybe
have
not tomorrow, but within, the next few days, I'll call Shepherd Construction and give them the notice to proceed, and they need to get on the ball.
How long would it be from the time you give them the notice to proceed until this room needs to be emptied out of all things county so they can do what they need to
Probably about a month to 6 weeks, probably, I would think.
Because they would order
Because-
doors.
No,
They'd order
and we're gonna have a lot of meetings with all the stakeholders and trying to get everybody on that same schedule to meet immediately isn't gonna happen. It's gonna take a couple of weeks to work through that whole process, right, getting stakeholders on board and working through all of those meetings, meeting notes, incorporating that into the picture of the design of what they want to have.
So quite possibly, we could still have November meetings here.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so we start working on the December meetings,
December,
maybe.
January, February, we need a plan.
That's not bad.
No, that's pretty quick. Any other questions? No, I'd entertain a motion for item up at that.
Well, we were in discussion. I had already made it.
Oh, yeah, it has been moved and seconded. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Jake, I appreciate it. 11, present for approval, final acceptance of the county road pavement striping project and direct the clerk to advertise for final payment to SNL Industrial Inc. The balance of $3,180 due on the 41st day following the first advertisement. Final cost of the contract was $63,300.50. Jake, please.
This is just to advertise for the county road paving project as being complete and advertise in the paper per state statute for 40 days. And then on the 41st day, we can release the 5% retainage, which is the $3,180 to SNL Industry.
Commissioners, any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion for 11.
I move that we provide item 11 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thanks, Jake, appreciate it. Item 12, present for approval, grant application to Wyoming Historic Preservation Office for a certified local government grant. Karen or Bailey? Karen, there you are. Good evening, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. So anyway, we are wanting to go after a SHPO grant in order to take forward a nomination for the West Side as a historic district and get that nomination moving forward. We have reached out and asked for requests for proposals. Unfortunately, we only received 2 back, one from a firm in Denver and one from local here to Laramie. And that is what our grant proposal was based on, was those price estimates. To remind you, the way the SHPO grant works is that we have to come up with 40% of the total, and SHPO pays for 60%. So with the way the grant has been written up and our best estimates at this point in time, we are looking for a commitment from the county for $13,202. Now, the grant application deadline is the end of October. And we have 2 other things on our agenda. We do need that commitment from you in order to submit this application into SHPO, which will be decided upon by the end of the year, early January. I have been working and talking with Andy Somerville to get on to the city council because the West Side is within the city boundaries as well as the county boundaries. We are hoping that they will come up and be agreeable to paying half of this. But I don't know that, and I will not be able to ascertain that prior to the deadline for submitting this grant application. In addition, we have been in contact with the Wyoming Trust Foundation, and they are looking positive on this. They believe that this should go forward, and they are supportive of this going forward. Their application deadline for us will be in April 2023. And it is a possibility that if we can get complete funding from the foundation, that neither the city or the county will be out any dollars. But like I said, I can't make those promises. I'm just letting you know what our plan is for making this happen, because we realize that we don't really want to be going to the same well for funding. Now, to give a little bit of background, we have been in conversations with SHPO. SHPO is very positive about this nomination. They believe that that the West Side should be a historic district, so we have their support. All right, so that block is not there. In addition, we have been in touch with the city, as I mentioned, but we have also been in touch with the West Side neighborhood and have had several meetings to reach out to them and ask them how they feel about this. And all I can say about that is those who show up have all been very, very positive about this nomination. They look at it as a sense of pride. They realize that there's not a whole lot of impact to them or, their daily lives or their properties by having this nomination, except for the fact that they believe that the perception of their area and their neighborhood would be very positively impacted if this nomination were to go through, and they would be able to get onto that list as a historic district. So that's our request. If you have any questions for me.
Karen, appreciate it. Commissioner Rivera, please.
Karen, can you give me a number of about approximately how many people you actually have made contact with who have attended these various meetings and have been positive? Give me a ballpark figure of how many people actually are showing up.
So the last meeting that we had, there were 60 in the neighborhood that were in attendance.
60, Karen?
Yes, yeah, 60.
Okay.
And they ranged from very long-term residents to some of the very new people. There were several couples there that had recently bought into the area. They'd only been there for a year. They're young couples without children yet. And, they also were very positive, and they have bought historical homes and are working to preserve them. So they are very active.
What kind of opposition have you, as far as comments, have you got?
Ask that again?
You have received comments at these meetings. They've
Yes.
not all been positive. Have you received some negative comments, some opposition to the move of making this area a historical area?
We have not received anything directly from the residents themselves. Now, at the same time, we have been discussing with the city about trying to get the city to put a historic overlay. I don't want to confuse the facts here, but the city has never put a historic overlay onto anything. And if they do, it would trigger certain codes, and the codes are, as far as I'm concerned, very lenient. It basically says, if we put in a historic overlay, then the people within that boundary have got to keep their property, maintained. It's not a lot of onus on it. So I do know that there is a bit of negativity amongst the city council about the historic overlay. And the historic overlay is only a protection at the city level. and is totally independent and has nothing to do with this nomination at the national level. This national level, as you know, we already have 2 historic districts here within the city limits, and those designations do not trigger anything that is in addition to what they already have to do. So as a result, I have personally received nothing but positive responses to our request. And I'm not saying that there aren't negative ones out there, but if they are, they have not reached out to me via email, by a phone call, or by attendance of these meetings.
Any further questions, Commissioner Richardson? Yeah. And Carrie, just so I'm clear, and hopefully if I have a question and somebody else has a question, if this were to be granted and that were to go forward and they got the national designation, somebody wanted to renovate, they would have to do no more than what they already are required, right? Locally.
That is right. That is a big myth, that when we put the historic designation on top, that somehow you have to start jumping through all these hoops and you're going to be restricted on what you can do on renovations. And that just is not a true statement when it comes to this historic district nomination. There is no requirements by any of the landowners, homeowners in the district at all.
Thank you.
Karen, so if this grant wasn't supported by, this application wasn't supported by the commissioners tonight, you run into the deadline, then do you need to wait another year before you could resubmit, or can you give me a schedule here?
We have to wait till next year. It'll postpone this by a year.
And is there a need necessarily for a rush? And I'm asking this, Karen, because I have heard some opposition from people out there. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we're not putting the cart before the horse here. And is there any harm in it running into next year?
There is nothing that says that this cannot be delayed further. There's no rush on this, other than the fact that this idea has been kicked around for more than 5 years, and this is the furthest it has gotten. And I would appreciate if you do continue to hear negativity, that you encourage them to contact us so that we are aware of it. The biggest thing that we heard, there were a lot of questions at our town hall meeting, and much like the one that Commissioner Gosar just asked, they're wanting to know whether or not, this is going to, what impact is going to have on this. And when this comes, the misconceptions are that no, it will not restrict the rights of the property owners. It will not stop any alterations to the property. It doesn't place any constraints. It doesn't raise property taxes. It doesn't regulate how the appearance of the property is going to be maintained, etc. What it does do to the landowners, those who are in historic homes and who wish to renovate and do it in a historic manner, if these homes are actually registered, what it does do is allows them to go after grant money to help them with those costs of historic preservation on their homes. That is the main benefit that they will receive, other than the perception of the community about West Side, this area.
But those funds would be available next year as well, correct, Karen?
There is funding that is given every year. It fluctuates every year. We have no idea how much money will come down from federal. And when it is, it's subdivided out among the states and then out to the county. So there's no guarantee of how much funding will be available from one year to the next. And we don't even know right now how much funding is available. So even if you were to approve this tonight, there's no guarantee that we will be awarded this grant.
And Karen, you mentioned earlier that you're still waiting to, for some level of commitment from the city. And if that was received, that there's a possibility that in this funding, that there wouldn't have to be a match from the city or the county. So would it behoove us to wait till there is that participation of the city?
No, this is, well, from the participation of the city, then maybe, okay? The issue there again is if we wait and I get onto the city's agenda, we will miss the deadline for this year. We'll have to wait till next year. And as far as us being able to go and do the application to the Wyoming Trust Foundation and get their backing, until we get 50% funding, we can't get any funding from them. It's a cart and a horse type thing. Until someone bellies up to the bar, we can't move forward. And you are our first stop, because without your funding today, we can't apply for the grant. And without some kind of commitment, we can't apply for the Wyoming Trust Foundation. I mean, that's just unfortunately the way the ball works.
Yeah, I would argue that our first stop is definitely getting agreement by the citizens, the community members over there, that they actually want this to move forward, and then we go from there. So I just want to make sure that there have been ample opportunities through meetings to have that input from community members who this is going to affect.
I understand that, and I agree, and it is a requirement. We have, when the boundary is laid down for this district, 50% of the landowners inside there have to agree to this. And if they don't, then the nomination cannot go to the national. So we have canvassed and have been working with the community for over 12 months on this. And we believe we have the support to go forward, or else we would not be here asking you for this money.
Thank you, Karen, for answering all those. Amy, do you have any input on this?
The only input I have is right now they are asking for the 13,000 in matching funds. My recommendation would be to put it in my grant match come budget, because I believe, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not something you'll be using right away if you are awarded in January, correct?
That's right. We will not be able to, okay, so the earliest we would be able to start spending money would be March, April of next year. However, if we go after the Wyoming fund, which we intend to do to go to that trust, we would not be spending any money, and this project would not be able to start until June, because that would be the requirement of from the Trust Foundation that we can't start until June 1st.
Yes, and by that time, then by budget time, we should know if they're asking for the full 13,000, if they're asking for half that, or if they don't need it at all. So that's my recommendation for the match portion. We've dealt with, I don't know, one of these grants every year I've been here. They're pretty easy to work with, and the agreement does go through the county. So your name is on it. So if it's not something you agree with, then speak up. But other than that, that's all I have on this one.
Karen, if the city doesn't sign off on it, does that stop the process, since most of it's in the city boundaries?
No, it does not. The city actually is not vocal in this nomination at all. The only two parties that are required to make this nomination go forward are the landowners and national. Those are the two parties that agree on this. And as I said, we have to have 50% of the landowners that are within the district as it is defined. And then it goes all the way up to the Secretary of State for their committee approval. So those are the only two approvals that are required to make this nomination happen.
Thank you. And then my final question is, looking at your scope of work, the public engagement sessions that were anticipated, could you tell me what that might look like? So is that going out there once, twice, 3 times? Is it a survey? What does that look like? Do you imagine?
I imagine that we will continue to hold town halls. We will also continue to go door to door, which we have done twice as the board members, knocking on every door and putting flyers out. And I think the main objective is to make sure that everybody understands clearly what the nomination is and is not, and so that we can go out there and actually be able to reassure everybody that these misconceptions of their property rights are not going to be infringed on.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anything else?
I'll say that I like it, I support it, and the reason I support it is because it's not regulatory. But it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, homeowners in that area can't get matching funds to do historically accurate improvements if they don't have the designation. So it doesn't, I'm gonna guess that the opposition to it is based in sort of misunderstanding or misinformation. Because without the historic designation, those funds aren't available, you know, for people to. So I only see upside. The only way that it could become challenging for them is if the city were to decide to create special regulations for that district. But from what we're doing is helping them get on, you know, a historic district, you know, eligibility for funds, you know, by designating it that way. And I'm fine with that. I like it.
And I'm assuming, Carol, that the change in demographics in that area is somewhat the push by some of those residents to want to receive this historical funding so that they can do some renovations like that. I'm assuming that some of the older, not necessarily age, but residents there, as far as having property, might be the ones who are a little unclear as to what this really entails. So future meetings might be a little bit more education as to what it actually means.
I'll have to agree with that statement because, you know, when we held our town hall meetings, like, you know, these are the questions that were being asked. And when they were given the reassurances, you know, they came on board. I will have to clarify, though, that because the way we are designated as the CLG, as our, you know, local, our whatever, the only way this happens is through our board, and therefore the only way it happens is through you as the county commissioners, because that's who we are designated through. So, you know, we are the only avenue for them to go through to make this work.
Thank you, Karen.
Any other questions, commissioners? I'd entertain a motion for item number 12, please.
I move that we approve the grant application to the Wyoming Historic Preservation Office for a certified local government grant related to the West Side historical, what would be the West Side Historical District.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Bailey, for the recommendation for the next year's grant match. I appreciate that. Item 13, present for approval, acceptance of local assistance and tribal consistency funds, LACF, CFDA number 21.032 in the amount of $1,086,088.46 for fiscal year 2022 and $1,086,088.46 for fiscal year 23 to be spent for governmental services. Bailey, please.
So just when we thought we're done getting handed money from the federal government, here's some more for us. I was just notified of this funding very end of September. I brought it before you guys at your last meeting as a discussion item. So here it is as an approval item to officially accept the funding. One of the things I talked about earlier is the benefit to accepting the funding right now is we can get it in the first tranche in our account and start getting interest on it. A couple other things I did mention that I just want to say again. This money at this point does not have very many rules and regulations with it, which opens up quite a few doors. Because of that, my recommendation is to kind of take this a little bit slower than ARPA. There is no deadline on these funds. We have to report on these funds until they're all spent. So once they're all spent, I do one final report and then I'm done. Reading in between the lines on all this, listening to numerous calls and webinars, it seems that this was intended for a big project. Some of the other things that they bring up construction a lot. They bring up big equipment purchases. I mean, it's intended for like one project where ARPA was really intended 100,000 here, 50,000 here, things like that. But it is, once you accept these funds, you are able to use it how you see fit. But it just seems to be, that seemed to be their intention. This funding, they did use the formula or a formula that they also use PILT funding for. So it is associated with PILT, but it's not associated with PILT. It is, you can definitely tell they have a whole list of counties who gets the funding, and majority of them are, but you can definitely see that there are counties that don't get it because they don't have federal funds or they don't have federal lands. I think that's it from me. Tracy, did I miss anything? Do you know? Maybe she's on a call. But any questions for you guys?
Commissioners, any questions? Tracy, go ahead, please.
Good evening. I don't have anything to add. I think Bailey did a really good job explaining everything. We just need to go into the portal and ask for this money.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? This seems like a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how unrestricted it is. That never happens, so.
Well, and the reason I'm suggesting that we kind of hold off on decisions you guys make on these funds is because I am a little concerned that something will come down. So I want to make sure that we're really into it a few months and that nothing else will come down. I mean, our auditors are here right now and they're testing ARPA like I knew they would. But I had mentioned to him, have you heard about the new funding? And he's like, no, I live in the past. And I was like, oh, well, let me tell you. I was like, this is going to be great for you guys next year. So we were kind of joking about it, but he's like, Bailey, just be careful. Like there are no rules now, but there easily could be. So I was like, yep, that's why I'm making the recommendation I am. And I mean, honestly, I'd like to kind of see till after the first of the year and see if something else comes out. But like I said, there's Davis Bacon is being waived on this. Some NEPA is being waived on it. There are still, it is still federal funding, so there are still some like CFR rules that we have to follow, but not all of them. So, I mean, it's brand new. So if we just take it a little slower, I would recommend that.
And I appreciate that recommendation.
I'd entertain a motion for 13 then, if there's further questions.
I move that we approve item 13 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Bailey. Thank you, Tracy. Item 14, present for approval, sub-recipient agreement between the Albany County Commissioners and the Albany County Public Library in the amount of $115,500 for American Rescue Plan Act grant funding, CFDA number 21.027 for the Albany County Early Development Coalition. Bailey.
So this is the last of those nonprofit, well, we lumped library with nonprofit, but those awards you kind of handed out to them back in May, I believe. This is the last one we were waiting on an agreement or the signed agreement on. So you've already approved the amount. This is just the agreement.
Commissioners, any questions? I personally think it's a fantastic idea. Public health and the library to get little ones with books earlier rather than later. I'd entertain a motion for item 14, please.
I move that we approve item 14 as presented.
Second.
Moving second, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 15, present for approval a supplemental contract to assign T.Y. Pickett an additional property appraisal, Boswell Wind LLC, the wind farm for tax year 2023, in the amount of $500 to be paid from the county assessor's budget, and direct chairman to sign the supplemental contract. Good evening, Chelsea. How are you?
Good evening, how are you?
Good, thank you. Go ahead, please.
This is just, like it says, a supplemental contract to add Boswell Wind LLC to our contract for TY Pickett for 2023. Legislation changed, so assessors are responsible for assessing independent power producers for 2023. And Boswell Wind falls into that classification. And they have started some minimal construction, so we need to get them assessed next year.
Commissioners, any questions?
No.
I'd entertain a motion for 15 then, please.
I move that we approve item 15 as presented.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item 16 has been removed, and at any point, if even if there's a motion in a second, and you have a comment to make, please raise your hand either in person or online, and we'll go from there. Don't feel like you can't be heard. Item 17, present for approval. Acceptance of the Bureau of Justice Assistance Fiscal Year 2022 Collaborative Crisis Response and Intervention Training Program. Excuse me, Intervention Training Program grant application, the amount of $249,985 to provide crisis intervention team training and certification for Albany County law enforcement. Sheriff Applehands, good evening.
Good evening. This is just the acceptance of the grant that was ratified a couple weeks ago. And will that we get called out to. So
All right, we're back. Can you guys hear us out in Cyberland?
Yeah, I've got you, Pete. What happened?
For some reason, we just lost the feed. Just went bye-bye. Did you hear, were you able to listen and hear Sheriff Applehand's discussion
I would-
about?
Please start from the top, Sheriff Applehands.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
So my question was, what is CIT training and what is it important for?
Right.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that didn't hear my explanation, CIT stands for Crisis Intervention Training. And what this grant will do is basically three things. It'll provide funding so that we can train all of our deputies, and to be honest, all of the law enforcement within Albany County in crisis intervention training, which is a training that helps law enforcement recognize people that are in mental health crisis situations on the calls that we go to, and also provides them resources so that they can connect people with resources. A lot of times they're outside the criminal justice system, so that people that are in mental health crisis can get the appropriate help that they need without being entered into the criminal justice system. The second thing it does is it allows us to basically train a trainer so that we can train people, send people to training outside of Laramie and crisis intervention team training so that they can come back and continue to train the people that we have here in Laramie. And then the third thing, the funding really allows us to create a long-term crisis intervention team. So taking all of the resources that we have here in Albany County, forming a team, creating new policies, making new partnerships so that all the calls that we go to with a mental health crisis, every deputy, law enforcement officer, police officer will basically have kind of the same outline, same policies, same procedures to try and help those people within the county. So funding allows us to, like I said, train, create that team, and give us long-term sustainability with that program.
And has that ever been done at the Albany County Sheriff's Department before?
No, we've had crisis intervention training, but we haven't had it sustained over a long period of time, or a crisis intervention team. So this is one of the first big steps of getting that funding, going towards a long-term team, and then really trying to work our way towards basically a crisis response team within law enforcement. And so we've had those conversations with the Albany County Mental Health Board. We're moving them towards that direction as well. This is a big step on trying to make that big first step, getting those people together, building that infrastructure so that we can go ahead and execute the team later on.
Sheriff, have some of your deputies been through CRI training?
CIT training?
CIT.
Yes, a lot of my deputies have been. So, but we also have a lot of new deputies in there that haven't been through there as well. And so, and it's the same with some of the other agencies that we have here in Albany County. So we'll be able actually
Can you guys hear us again, please? Sorry about that.
Yeah, we've got you here.
Thank you.
One last question, Sheriff. You talked about train the trainer so that this perpetuates it, it keeps it going and all. Do you designate which of your deputies that you want to be trained so that they can continue the training?
Yeah, internally, we'll go ahead and look at deputies that have a lot of experience and then like longevity. So we'll identify those deputies, and those will be the ones that ultimately be selected for, to be training the trainer. So,
Well, this is great to have this funding, great for the community.
yeah, no, we couldn't have done it without the work of all of our grant writers, Bailey and then Karen as well. So they did a really great job, and we're all happy that it was able to.
Well, we needed somebody, leadership who wanted to move forward with this kind of mental health attention, so that's good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, like I said, we're really excited to get to that.
Any other questions, commissioners? I'd entertain a motion for item 17, please.
I move that we approve item 17 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you,
All right.
Sheriff, and thanks
you,
for bringing $250,000 into the community of such amazing work.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Item 18, present for approval, Albany County Board of Commissioners Resolution 2022-012, City of Laramie Resolution 2022-062, resolution to extend the terms for 4 members of the Environmental Advisory Committee for the City of Laramie, Wyoming. I will take this one. We had 4 EAC members' terms who stopped in October and will not continue. We wanted to make this into January so they could continue on with the cap update that they had started with, instead of trying to bring in 4 new members if 4 people didn't want to re-up and have to go through that process. And so this was unanimously approved by the EAC. Those 4 members were all willing to do at least through to January or through January, and then we'll just go from there after that with the regular process. That was the entire thinking. Mary Grace, were you one of those people that the term was up, or
She is.
please, where I've gotten things wrong, please fill it in correctly, please.
No, that sounds great, Pete. That's spot on.
Awesome. Any other?
Well, and to be clear, if they want to continue serving,
Right.
when the positions open up in January or whatever, they could apply,
Yeah.
along with.
Yeah, and since it is a joint appointed board, both the city and the county have to have resolutions. And the city sent us theirs. They were so kind as to make it up and send it to us. So, any other questions? I'd entertain a motion for 18 then, please.
I move that we approve resolution 2022-12. To extend the terms of 4 members of the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. Item 19, thank you, Mary Grace. Present for approval 2022 wellness contract between Albany County and Wyoming Health Fairs. Vanessa, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Gosar and Commissioners. Tonight I bring forward the contract with Wyoming Health Fair for our employee wellness benefit fair on November 16th. This provides the employees the opportunity to have their blood drawn and complete a health assessment. The prices have gone up, just like everything in the world right now. Prices have gone up slightly compared to our contracts last year, and it's been brought to my attention that the prices are slowly rising over the last several years. So we will be looking at some other avenues next year. Just to be clear, we had 48 participants last year. So only about a third of our employees participated in the blood draw and the health assessment that we provided at the wellness fair. So hopefully we can get those numbers up and encourage our employees to take advantage of this program.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
It's cool. I mean, you know, this is paid for out of the health insurance operating account, right?
And this of these tests, who decides which tests should be on that list?
So we consult with Wyoming Health Fair. So currently it's the chemistry panel, a hemogram, a PSA for men, and a vitamin D for women is what we've contracted. But we just talk with what they recommend, and that's kind of what we've gone through with the last several years.
Okay.
So it's things like lipids, A1C.
A1C is not included. No, that's an additional $30. So they send us kind of a menu, so to speak, of options, and this is what we've gone through the last several years and what they've recommended. And it covers the gamut for employees. Employees can also request other tests to be done at their cost. This is just what the county will cover.
So these tests are free to the employees who
That's correct.
take good use of it. And so to the 102 or so who did not, these
Right,
are
when I
free.
saw that,
for
when I
crying out loud.
found out those numbers, that was kind of discouraging.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we'll get more this year.
Hope so.
But maybe we can do a better job as a commission, letting people know. I will be there getting my blood drawn because it's a great deal.
Me too.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I actually think that the reason people don't go is their sense of responsibility to their job. You know, like, yeah, for the managers, they almost have to structure a way for people to go to it, or they, you know, or they're gonna stay in their office working. So hopefully I don't know if there's a way for us to communicate to our elected officials and department heads, but it would be cool if they could manage the work, you know, to rotate people out and send them over there.
absolutely. And next year, we're looking at doing it on the holiday that the courthouse is closed. So that, but it's a working day for our employees, so they don't even have to, all they have to do is come to work. And then
Yeah.
hopefully, so
And
that's
to
something we're-
piggyback on what Peter said, it is a matter of health, you know, for these departments, the people as well. I mean, this is free, so that's got to be sent out without any doubt for our employees, that there's no cost to them unless they decide to do something additional. But it is by doing this, they would remain healthy so that they can be here to work. You said a lot of these people are so dedicated to working and they don't feel like they can take the time off to go do this. Well, we want them to be able to work and not have to take the time off because they're sick. So, yeah.
We've also opened it up to families. The county will not incur the cost for the families, but if they have a spouse or a child who they want to come and participate in the blood draw, Wyoming Health Fair will be there to do that as well. So.
Okay.
Jackie or somebody else said, how disruptive is it to the courthouse operations to start at like 9 o'clock on a day?
Actually, the beauty of the fair is it starts at 6:30 a.m. And because we don't open the doors until 9 a.m., it's a requirement in my office, but
Okay.
I mean, to attend the fair, whether or not they choose, the benefit is up to the individual, but everyone is required to attend the fair in my office.
Awesome. Okay. And if we could include whether there's fasting or not fasting, I know there's a lot of confusion about that. And it sometimes keeps people from actually getting the blood. They're like, I ate, right? And so that would be super. Thank you.
And Nisa, I have another question.
Yes.
As far as the health insurance enrollment part,
Mhm.
we are offering, they can do that at the health fair too, right?
Yeah, so open enrollment will start November 7th and it will close the 18th. So John Martin from Hub will be there for any employees that have questions. Jan and I will be there. So employees, if they have, will have forms that they can fill out, or if they have questions about the forms, we can help with that as well. So, absolutely.
Because the employees have, you know, a few different plans to choose from as far as what the county provides. So it can be helpful to them to stop in there. I actually know that it causes some people a fair amount of stress trying to carve out space in their life to do that. And because he's there, that's the time to do it. And so even that might even be as much of an incentive as the health fair itself, because it gives them a chance to circle back and make sure that they're satisfied with what they're doing for their family.
Or if they
And
need
so-
to bring a spouse or
Yeah.
someone, my husband could not go to this by himself. So I would be the one that would have to be there to ask the question, so.
That's fine. I think my wife and I are interchangeable, but I would, we would probably do better together than one or the other of us.
Jackie, please.
Mr. Chairman, besides having the health insurance fund pay for the services that employees have the option of getting, they also receive a $25 gift card for completing the health assessment after the fact. And so it's a win-win for employees. And I would hope too, we just need to encourage our employees to take advantage because it is so important to stay healthy for our insurance and for our employees.
And along with this wellness program, we actually have the contract for a year to use their wellness program. So Jana and I are putting our heads together on some ideas that we can start after the first of the year, just to encourage our employees some challenges. Drinking more water. I know I struggle when I'm busy to drink enough water throughout the day. So just drinking more water, getting steps in, et cetera, et cetera. So the health assessment is part of it, but also being able to use the programs, the challenges that they have set up will be beneficial as well.
I don't know how you're thinking about that. And maybe next year we can think about somebody to help people understand screening programs, so mammograms, colonoscopies and those type of things. That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion for item 19 if there are no further questions.
I move that we approve item 19 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, all those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Anissa,
Thank
for
you.
doing this. I appreciate it. Item 20, discuss and consider support of the request from the Environmental Advisory Committee to support the call to next steps developed by the Joint Climate Action Task Force. This was approved by the Environmental Advisory Committee, unanimous, but we're going to turn it over to Mary Grace Bedwell, who is on the EAC, and Dr. Rachel Bedoli, plus Jared O'Brien are with us. And I think Luke is here also. And I'm thinking we'll see if anybody else joins us up. Mary Grace, why don't I hand it over to you, and then you can hand it to whoever you need to go next.
Awesome. And I just want to see if I can get screen sharing capabilities for this, just because we do have a accompanying presentation.
Let me see what I can get done here.
Oh, perfect. I just saw it come through.
That's because Pete's fast.
Nope, we had Oz.
You should have totally taken credit for that.
Right.
Adam would know better. Okay, Mary Grace, we have it up in front of us. Is it where you need it to be?
Yes, that looks great. That's the nice thing about your dual screens is I can see my screen on your screen. So I will just start off with a brief introduction of myself. Like Pete said, I'm Mary Grace Bedwell. I'm a representative on the Environmental Advisory Committee from the city, just that I live within city limits. I've been in Laramie for about 8 years and involved with, I guess, over 8 years at this point, and involved with a lot of these efforts through school. And then now as a volunteer in my non-day job hours. So with that, I will just go ahead and kick it to Jared O'Brien, my co-presenter, for a background, and then I will pick up with some of our efforts moving forward.
And Mary Grace, I think it's a slide ahead from where you had wanted to start, possibly.
Oh, good. Yes. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Rachel.
I think one more, or is that?
Oh, yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Mary Grace. So I'm Jared O'Brien. I'm currently the co-community organizer for the Alliance for Renewable Energy, an affiliate of Powder River Basin Resource Council. I'm also a student at the University of Wyoming, majoring in mathematics with a double minor in sustainability and energy resource management. So I'll get us kind of started with this presentation. Thanks y'all, Honorable Chair and Board of Commissioners. So our story or roadmap begins in the fall of 2018 when community members of Laramie formed the Alliance for Renewable Energy, or ARE, whose mission was and continues to be transitioning our communities to renewable energy based on scientific data, economic fairness, public education, and support. To achieve this mission, ARE has partnered with various community stakeholders, such as the University of Wyoming students, staff, and faculty from the Haub School of Environmental and Natural Resources, specifically within the campus sustainability course, Laramie Office of City Management staff, Laramie City Council, the Environmental Advisory Committee, the Albany County Board of Commissioners. So the first collaborative project between ARE, the Haub School, and the city occurred during the spring semester of 2019 with the creation of Laramie's first baseline emissions inventory calculator, which was presented and finished towards the end of that summer by Xanthi York. Next slide, please. The second collaborative project occurred the following year, spring 2020, with the completion of a community-wide emissions inventory through a partnership with ICLEI and the beginnings of a municipal emissions reduction plan outline. Laramie then later became a member of ICLEI. For those that don't know, ICLEI is an international non-government organization that promotes sustainable development. Next slide, please. And simultaneously, during that period, members of ARE conducted extensive research, made a series of presentations to Laramie City staff, City Council, and EAC, and combined efforts to establish policy addressing the need for community carbon emissions reductions. Moreover, informing stakeholders of lost funding opportunities provided by Rocky Mountain Power's Blue Sky Grant. This eventually led to City Council unanimously adopting the carbon neutral by 2050 resolution, the first resolution of its kind in Wyoming. Next slide, please. The third collaborative project occurred during the spring of 2021, where students evaluated local incentives for solar and explored the possibility of a joint UW and city climate action planning partnership. The latter project, my project before joining ARE, garnered support for such a partnership with letters of support from the EAC, ASUW, which is the student body government over at UW, or the University of Wyoming, the University of Wyoming Sustainability Coalition, Alliance for Renewable Energy, Shepherd Symposium, and the Shepherd Symposium Committee. Just for context, for those that don't know, I only became community organizer at the beginning of January this year. So last year was the time that I worked on this project, and this is kind of us going forward with this project in the next steps or iteration of this continuation of efforts. And next slide, please. So after a period of synthesis, analysis, and review during the summer of 2021, it became apparent that this community needs a long-lasting coalition structure developed from professional relationships to sustain coordinated and strategic emissions reduction efforts in the short and long term. Thus, the Joint Climate Action Planning Task Force was formed and met for the first time in September of 2021. So before handing it over to Mary Grace to explain exactly like what the task force has done, and what we would like from you, or asking from you, I'd like to point out two things. So the first, the three previously mentioned projects in 2019, 2020, and 2021 were the only collaborative sustainability projects between the university and the community since 2007, which is when the UW became a charter member of the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. That's a mouthful, or the ACU-PCC. They had also adopted a climate action plan of their own. These 2, these collaborative efforts or projects serve not only to improve our community from a holistic approach, but also serve to abate our community's declining workforce numbers through the vision and values of agency, heart, and hope. So thank you. I'll now hand it over to Mary Grace Bedwell.
Awesome. Thank you for that great setup, Jared. So like he said, I'll be providing a little bit of context to sort of the who, what, where, when, why of the coalition. So for starters, we're a group of representatives from the city, county, and the University of Wyoming that organized thanks to the efforts of the Campus Sustainability Course, ARE, and the Campus Sustainability Coalition. We're made up of students, elected and appointed officials, professors, UW staff, and community members. And it's really been a great meeting of the minds from all corners and constituencies. So we established with the intention of having recommendations ready to present for feedback at the Shepherd Symposium on Earth Day of this year. And you can see our goals here on this slide. So developing a lasting coalition structure, exploring and evaluating projects and strategies for emissions reduction, and coordinating and leveraging the shared assets to really create an impact that we couldn't have otherwise. So before I present the recommendations, I just want to talk about the criteria that we used to get to them. What the criteria we thought about are what can we do together that we can't accomplish alone? That's the point of a collaboration. What will reduce emissions using concrete and feasible strategies and proven technologies with cost savings. So really taking into account the things that often are at the forefront of our minds as we tackle these environmental issues. And also what will be robust and enduring while also addressing this urgent need that we have in our community and our world. So admittedly, this is a pretty lofty goal, but the 9 recommendations we're bringing forward today really do meet the criteria that we set. We began with 90 ideas, nearly 90, and we combined them, chipped away, and really worked at them to get to where we are today. So with that said, let's dive into these recommendations. And these are on the recommendations one-pager that I think was provided to you. So if anyone needs to follow along. Beginning with sort of operational actions, we recommend pursuing more large-scale solar using bulk buys and a community-based approach. We also propose hybridizing or electrifying fleets across these 3 entities, the city, the county, and the university, as well as pursuing a unified compost stream. We sort of envision that large scale and commercial to start with businesses and those bigger entities like the university, and then moving towards residential, just for a little bit of context there. The last operational actions we recommend is taking a look at transportation and thinking about how we can build a sustainable system while also including walking and biking infrastructure and really tapping into the values and the needs of our community. Moving into community and citizen action, it is worth noting that at the Shepherd Symposium, we saw a lot of faith in individual action. So we looked at this from the perspective of how can we elevate that passion to a collective impact and really capitalize on what people feel they can accomplish on their own. So our recommendations for this include pursuing energy audit and loan programs for improving efficiency, both at home and for businesses to really empower those individuals. And we also hope to draw on programs and models that already exist here in the state and beyond for those. There's a lot of great examples that we have here in our Wyoming community. Additionally, we also see value in developing joint messaging and learning opportunities regarding a wide range of environmental topics, whether that's programs that we're recommending or other subject areas that might have impact in emissions reduction in our community. And then finally, in terms of supporting these actions and getting the work done, we recommend standardizing emissions inventories across the 3 entities to track the work being done. And also importantly, the return on investment across all parties as we're working together. And then we also recognize that a joint approach requires joint funding, and we're pursuing those together and recognize that pursuing those together will be incredibly important. And then our last recommendation is to keep our coalition going. So as I said, we aimed for an iterative process, both, oh, did this go in the wrong? Okay. We aimed for a super iterative process, both internally with our diverse representation and community involvement, as well as when we took it to the community for feedback. At the Shepherd Symposium, we had over 80 attendees throughout the half-day event, both in person and virtually. And we received great feedback and support for the recommendations that I just gave you. You'll also see Pete in that photo there. He was in attendance. As we began the task force, we began as a task force working to develop recommendations for the symposium. And now we've completed our task, but we still see an immense value in working together towards implementation. And before we dive into any questions on these 9 recommendations, I'd like to talk a little bit about where we are and what steps have been taken towards achieving our goals already. So we recognize that all 3 entities do already conduct emissions inventories, though they use different calculators. Jared mentioned ICLEI, which is geared more towards local governments. The university has a different setup that is a little bit more geared towards universities, but we're on the right track of getting the data that we need moving forward. Additionally, we've also begun pursuing funding jointly. And while we haven't received any grants at this point, a lot of legwork has already been completed in those processes that will help us in future efforts. We're also looking into opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act and other federal programs that are in place or will soon be in place. And last but not least, the coalition is still meeting. So we're continuing the work and we're along for the ride as we work towards these next steps. So this brings me to the why of today, why we're here, why am I presenting to you, and what am I asking for? I'm presenting to you as a representative of EAC, who's had a hand in the development of these recommendations. We as EAC believe that this meets our directive to advise the Board of County Commissioners on environmental alternatives relevant to your constituency. Next steps for us as a coalition more broadly include presenting to the relevant decision makers along this timeline, so the county, the city, and the university, to garner support. And then with the support, we'll move into the implementation phase. So from our perspective, implementation looks like what you see here, truly integrating these recommendations into the day-to-day operations of the county, the city, and the university. A formal commitment and some administration and operational adjustments, and then continued support as we work together to have this sort of collective impact. Like I said before, it's really critical to meet this urgent need we feel in our community, as well as making sure that we're meeting the needs and that criteria that we originally set forth. So that was a lot of information all at once. I would like to acknowledge before we welcome questions that we do have a wealth of knowledge here in our audience with Dr. Rachel Badoli, and then coalition member and ASUW Director of Sustainability, Luke Macy. I think I got your title right. And then we welcome any questions that you might have in hopes that myself or anyone else here can get them answered. And I will stop sharing my screen, but can open it up again in case anyone needs to refer back to it.
Thank you, Mary Grace. Thank you, Jared. I really do appreciate. I love the pictures, and colorful pictures are always better for me. So, commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I too want to applaud the great work that's been done here, and I am more than willing to acknowledge the recommendations and all. I'd love to hear from some of the other members here tonight who haven't spoken yet, and I also want to acknowledge your involvement, Commissioner Gosar. Thank you for attending this and being interested on the part of the county commissioners.
So Luke or Dr. Badoli, would you have anything you'd like to share with us? Let's go Dr. Badoli first, and then let's go to Luke next.
Thank you, Commissioner Gosar, and thanks to all of you for having us here tonight. I think I'll just share how continually proud I am of our student and youth leadership in this effort. All of the people here have been my students in the past, are continuing to be my students or other student leaders. So I think that's really invigorating for a community-based effort. And I also really value that as the City of Laramie staff has continued to say, and I think we share it here at county venues as well, this is a really positive partnership between the university and the community, which can sometimes be challenging. So I appreciate that. It's been wonderful to work with Commissioner Gosar And I think what we're asking is really just to explore what we can do and start to put the weight of decision makers behind this so that we can really effectively plan and advance these recommendations moving forward, because I think we will be better able to meet our goals together. So I think that's my spiel, but I would be happy to answer any questions about history or technical components of this if I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Badoli. We'll get Luke in here and then we'll start the lightning question round, if that's all right. Luke, go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. I would just like to thank you all for having us here today. I would like to echo what Dr. Badoli said. I think sustainability is becoming more important than ever after so many years being focused on wellness these last few years. And so I would just like to say that this is such a positive movement, and I'm really happy to see the university and the county start to make steps towards change. So I'm also here to answer questions, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Commissioners, any questions come to mind?
Yeah, how will the emissions inventories go forth? Will they be similar to the survey that was sent out for this round of information?
So I do know that the city is continuing to conduct their inventory through ICLEI, and we have been able to fund a graduate assistant who works with me and the city to do that. I envision that we could explore similar opportunities and joint funding for internships to integrate the county's inventory, but it would be a similar data collection system, which I think is what you're asking. And also the first time doing it is the heavy lift. So I think hopefully there's a good pathway laid out for continuing to collect those data for the county.
And just to add to that, both the city and the county belong to ICLEI, and so we are currently sharing the same calculator. Different pieces of the calculator. We don't have, a landfill that they have, but it's apples and apples between us. The one difference is the university, where there needs to be a bit of a conversion so that if we wanted to have a holistic community-wide idea of emissions, so that we could get their oranges to look with to manage with our apples, right, on the data. A really weird way of putting that.
Well, I would say that's an excellent example of how the overlap is so critical to making sure that we really track emissions efficiently. The landfill is a perfect example of that. It's a shared resource that all three entities use. We don't want to triple count it, obviously, because it's one of the largest emitters, if not the largest emitter for the city proper, but also likely for our community since it's a shared resource. So an unintentional, great example that you gave. Or maybe intentional. I don't want to downplay.
I have an observation I'm in a transportation-based business, and I really like this. When you look at the amount of real estate the university owns, these technologies to me, and this is I'm making a statement, but it's a question that any of you could comment on. I guess the question is, do you find in your work that that the technologies are more available for enclosed structures, buildings, as opposed to transportation? Like, I think when I look at natural gas vehicles, electric vehicles, especially if you're talking about emergency services and the needs that they have, or heavy equipment, motor graders, we have 500 miles of dirt road in the county. The technology isn't there to be economically feasible, or at least this is my belief. Maybe I'm behind on the curve, but I kind of try to stay up on it because of the kind of business I'm in. So it seems to me the easiest things to attack are the physical, real estate, buildings, and the transportation part is harder because of the demands that emergency services have and the technologies related to transportation.
I think that's a really astute point, and I think we really intentionally developed the criteria to guide our decisions, right? So not putting all of our efforts into untested and expensive technologies, but ones that are sort of tried and true and becoming more cost effective in whatever sector is presenting an opportunity for us at the moment. So the city, for example, is exploring electrification of their fleet and charging stations for citizens, but I don't believe that anyone is saying wholesale we should completely move to natural gas or electrified vehicles on all fronts. So I think it would be exploring these opportunities as they come. And for example, that's something we could explore with the university fleet. I do think you're right that many of the cost savings will come from energy efficiency and reduced costs of renewables on a large scale in the immediate future. But again, I think that our values and criteria that we selected together should guide these decisions instead of just any new shiny thing that's coming our way.
Yeah, just to add to that, I sat on the transportation part of the Shepherd Symposium, and it's not always the cool whiz bang, right, that is useful. I think most people, college students, bike net people, and citizens were interested in infrastructure for biking within the city limit, right? Making it a bit more safe for people, maybe designated bike boulevards or pedestrian bike boulevards, so that more people would bike. And there are places in Copenhagen, for instance, where 50% of the people commute every day to work. That's a huge city, and 50% commute to work by bicycle. And for them, it comes down to three things: infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure, right? They have separated bikes from traffic. They've separated them from buses, so that people feel, and you see the pictures if you go look at it, there's just this line of people biking to work in the morning. And so not only is it reducing emissions, but as a person who works in health, that just makes me smile, because biking to work is really healthy for you, as it turns out, and ask Sue. I think there's some cool new stuff, but I think there's also going back to different ways of doing it. I have to tell you, when I worked with the people from the Haupt School for the emissions calculator, I was shocked to learn that a couple of buildings at the county are $4,000 and $5,000 a month in electricity. That is a part of a job that if we get down to LED lights, if we get it to half of those, now there is real savings. And I would not have known that without those emission audits. And I think not only the county would be nice to know that, but other entities, buildings that are available through Rocky Mountain Power, just getting the word out to businesses and say, hey, this is available to you. Take them up on it. They want to help you save money. So anything else? I just want to also put a shout out to those of you on the Climate Action Task Force. That was totally voluntary. It met routinely, if not monthly, a couple times each month. And great conversations about, we might have an idea, but to get it across the line, you had to weather Dr. Badoli and Jared and Mary Grace and Luke recently to make it happen. And there was a really nice conversation about, hey, we'd like to do this, but is that really practical? And is that something that we can work together on? I know Bailey and I and Dr. Badoli and some other folks worked on a grant that we weren't successful on, but it did lend the work to, I think we have a nice structure should the Inflation Reduction Act be what it assumes, what I assume it is, to be able to dust that baby off, maybe ask for a bit more money this time around, and see if we can get ready to go for the community. And that involved the city, the county, and hopefully the university. So.
Well, and the things that are possible might change as technology changes.
You bet.
What's possible now may not, the limitations of today may not be here in 5 or 10 years.
I just want to add that a lot of the limitations actually don't exist for bicycling in Laramie and in the US. As many as 40 years ago, I did several bike trips to the Netherlands, and they've forever had a system of bicycles separated from the autos and includes stop signs, stop lights for bicycles. And so, yes, the Netherlands is a small country, but they are rural in a lot of ways. And they had people riding into bikes with their Dutch shoes on and their conduit on their bike and paying attention to the signal lights for the bicycles. Also the stop signs and all, totally separate systems. So it's very much doable. We don't need to always be thinking in the constraints of automobiles and all. And so kudos to you guys for coming together and giving so much of your time, but it is possible. It's been out there in Europe for so long.
They even skate the ditches in the wintertime. When you can't get on your bike, because I don't know why, but maybe the wind doesn't blow enough to make the ice rough. I don't know. But they skate because there's ditches everywhere.
That's why they win the Olympics.
You're right.
Mary Grace or Dr. Bedoli or Jared or Luke, any wrap ups for us, or is there a particular letter or just a conversation that you wanted us to be supportive? It seems like the three of us are in support of this, and just what next steps would you need from us?
Yeah, I would, defer to Rachel on this one. We had a formal letter of support to EAC, which was great. I guess that's just my final comment, is that it's great to bring something from EAC to the county. I know that we've worked on a couple projects over time, but it's just really awesome to finally be here, not in person, but in person presenting you tonight. So I'll defer to Rachel for what would be the most helpful as we move forward to these other entities. We'll present to the city next week, like we said, and whatever product we request from you, we'll just request a subsequent equivalent one from them and then move forward towards the university.
I think that's wonderful. I think a letter does not hurt at all. If we would like to replicate the one from the EAC and have you all and ideally the city sign it. And I think one thing that would be really helpful, you see university students here. I'm a faculty member, we have staff members. Knowing that your support is there will be very helpful when we present to university decision makers. And I think I have encouraged Commissioner Gosar to attend that meeting with us so that we can effectively grow these town-gown community university partnerships. So I think that would be sort of two things, just acknowledging the support generally, being able to share that with the university, and ideally a signed letter, I think would just give it extra oomph.
Well, I got to tell you, thank you so much. If you would maybe give us a form letter, if you would send a form letter so that it's not the EAC, but us, and whatever you needed, we'll get it onto the agenda and move forward. I really do appreciate, first of all of your work and your passion. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming and taking time to present and making such a wonderful presentation to us. And thanks for being and continuing to be involved in this. Not many people say, please let me volunteer some more as their last recommendation, right? But that's what these guys said. And so thank you very much. That's how communities are built, in my opinion. If there's anything else you'd like to say before you head out, I really do appreciate it. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I would just say thank you for your time, honestly, and yeah, go Laramie, go Laradice. Thank you again.
I would
Yes,
just
thank
like
you all
to
so
say-
much.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Berdoli. I would just like to say, being on the CAP task force for only a couple of months now, I can just see how amazing this group is and the amazing work they're getting done. And so I just appreciate being a part of the movement, and it was nice meeting you all today.
And I was just saying, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
end with a final thank you too. And also, no one has called me Dr. Badoli this much, maybe ever. So Rachel is totally fine too. But thank you all for being so formal.
I don't think
Anything else, Mary Grace?
Nope, that's it. Just from EAC, once again, I thank you for extending my term, but also for your support on this. It's really great to see it moving forward, and happy to be able to contribute.
Well, we look forward to working together, not only as the commission with the city, but also the commission with people in Albany County, because it has to get to regular folks and their homes and their processes for it to really make a substantial difference. And so thank you guys for thinking that way. I really do appreciate it. Have a great night. I would, item 20 says discuss and consider support of the request from the Environmental Advisory Committee to support the call to next steps developed by the Joint Climate Action Task Force. Commission, do you want to see that in the form of a letter, or do you feel comfortable enough to support what you saw tonight?
Sure, I feel totally comfortable. But if they're requesting that we sign something.
Yeah, I support it, and it doesn't matter to me what form it comes in.
Okay, do you want to make that motion, and then we'll just be done with it, and they can send a letter and we'll put it on the next agenda? Okay.
I move that we show our support for this request from the Environmental Advisory Committee to support the call to next steps, and we will do it in any form. If we receive a letter, we all will sign it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I guess the only thing that I would say is that it's nice that they do this work, and hopefully recommendations come from it that make economic stewardship sense. Like for me, I'm not a climate activist, but I know that there are technologies that save money and clear up the air, and so I would personally look at it from the tax money stewardship perspective, probably more than an environmental one. But those aren't exclusive, right? They fit together sometimes, and other times they don't. So hopefully they can look at recommendations or technologies or ideas that there's a return on investment that is practical.
Right. I thought that was one of the great things that I didn't think like that when I was their age, about the return on investment or the practicality of what was the lowest hanging fruit. So weatherization, right, is a really interesting approach to saving the climate, right?
There's no moving parts,
right? And the return on investment is in months sometimes.
Yes.
And so they had thought about that as 20 and 23-year-olds, so.
Expanding foam insulation is cheap. It's neato stuff. It's fun to play with, and it works good. So, it's like you could go way down some esoteric avenue, but most of the things are simple, like really simple and cheap. You can get 80% of it done that way, and then the last 20% starts getting expensive. But
yeah. And the bike boulevards, those sometimes just require spray paint, right? Or a designation of a road or two, where you put a barrier. Maybe you make it into a one-way with bike, the lanes on either side that are designated, that are physically separate, so that people feel comfortable. And that was not only from university students at the table and the community, but also community members, older and younger, saying if it was a little bit more safer, I would walk more, I would ride my bike more, especially between the university and the downtown area. So
yeah, parking's expensive, and when you travel by some methods, you always get to park right by the door.
So it's been moved and seconded. We didn't vote on it, I don't believe.
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you guys for your time, and thanks for having them on the agenda. 21, present for approval lease agreement between the Albany County and Xerox for the usage of 14 MFP printers for 5 years via the Wyoming NASPO contract, not to exceed the monthly expense of $1,841.14. Adam, I think you're there.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Hi. So presented, go again?
Go ahead, please.
Presented before you is newer lease renewal for our large format printers, large multi-job printers. So most departments have one, if not two. This process started with a presentation to the department heads and elects in the monthly meeting, weighing the benefits and the costs associated with either buying out our current fleet or looking to renew a lease on new equipment. There was strong opinions to move forward with the new lease on the new equipment, as both options were of a cost-saving venture. The new lease, we would be transitioning from 13 units of about 3 to 4 different model types to 14 units, all of the same model type. So several departments are getting an upgrade in terms of color, efficiency. Hole punch essentially is standardizing the workforce on if one person needs to do this. There's an assumption that many do. It also allows us to better utilize the toner that gets ordered and utilized across the county. So we're not trying to have to cover 4 different model sets. This is, and like I said, there's also an additional printer. We looked at adding in the crime victim witness printer that wasn't a part of the lease. It's an owned unit that is aging pretty rapidly. The lease would transition, let's say current costs of our current lease that we just eradicated to end was $22.39 a month. This new lease is coming in at $18.41. Again, this is on brand new hardware. Then the second stage of this will be essentially a renegotiation on the print services and the print costs, with the goal of being close to just over, just under a $1,200 monthly savings. I also have our Xerox rep on today, Barry, who's been a great assistance through all this. So if you have any questions in that direction, we can open it up and he can answer anything in those terms as well.
Thank you, Adam. Commissioners, any questions for Adam?
It'd be nice to save 14,000 a year.
Yeah, and have better equipment. Adam, did you have any idea about getting the physical printers? I know there's sometimes that can be kind of a struggle at this point.
So how this will work is as soon as we ratify this, the current lease, this lease amount goes into effect on our current inventory. So we're already paying the lower cost of the two. And then timeline on the new printers, I don't have an ETA on. Barry, if you want to chime in there.
Yeah, we are looking, or first off, thanks everyone for letting me join. We're looking about 3 to 4 months before, we're looking about 90 days is what we've been told, 90 to 120 before we physically get our hands on the equipment in Denver, and then it is coordinated delivery with Adam. So like Adam said, from the time this new lease is executed until the time of delivery, we're closing down all the current lease stuff. You pay the lesser of the two leases, the old versus new. The new's the cheaper of the two. And then we essentially rent you that equipment until the new equipment arrives, and then we coordinate delivery. So we're looking about 3 to 4 months.
Thank you, Barry. And Adam, this comes with service agreements, right? For all these 14 printers, the cost that you're quoting us.
So that is just the leasing costs. And the costing that I gave you for the current versus the new is just the leasing costs, apples to apples. So these will be renegotiated. We're looking at a per page instance instead of our print as a whole current concept. The estimated cost savings based on the last 6 months of usage is close to, it's about half. It's dropping it from $1,500 a month down to about $800 a month.
Super.
Because maintenance is based on usage, right?
So, yeah, so when you look at the total cost of a printer, let's see here, I'm trying to go through the numbers. Essentially, the cost number was $1,500 a month divided by the 14 printers. That turns into the cost of like 1.5 toners. And that covers all of our toner plus all service to and from the site and maintenance work, fusers, kind of the works. Pete, I know we had discussed looking at, the equation in the balancing act between printing costs versus bringing it in-house in some of those manners. And I can't justify going that route and looking at bringing in a position in that set when it's fairly cost effective to stay in this model.
It ain't broke, don't fix it. Any other questions, commissioners? I'd entertain a motion for item 21 then.
I move that we approve item 21 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Thanks, Adam.
You guys.
Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item 22, executive session pursuant to Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405 AII and 16-4-405 ABII. Commissioners, I'd entertain a motion to enter executive session, and then we'll move the room to where we need to, who will be in here and who won't be in here.
I move that we exit regular session and move into executive session pursuant to Wyoming statute 16-4-405 A2 and 16-4-405 A7.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.